So these are a couple of prints of the latest FAB365 Robot B, and this one's printed at a 25% larger, so my slicer was set at 125%, and this one's at 140%, which is the largest that I could fit on the Prusa MK3. But the main difference that you're going to notice is the original file for the robot has the very squatty legs. And I realized it was a look they were going for. It was intentional. I didn't really care for it though. Well, I like this proportions a lot better. So I thought I'd just do a little tutorial on one way of doing it. There's so many ways of modifying STL files and so many programs out there, and they're all free. But one that I've used for a long time, and let's swing the camera around here a little bit, is Flash Print, which is the program that you can use with your Flash Forge printers. It's free to download, it's free to use, and if you just want to use it for cutting up things, duplicating things, rotating things, putting them back together and resaving them as a new STL file, it's one of the easiest and quickest programs out there, at least for me to use. I mean, things like MeshMixer are always crashing my computer. It doesn't matter what I'm trying to do. None of my computers have ever liked MeshMixer. If I don't screw it up, then the computer does. But all the other slicing programs out there will let you do various things and different things. So anyway, you can download the Flash Print if you want to fool around with it. You'll find it on the Flash Forge website. And if you want to get the largest build area for dropping things in, even though I have never owned one, you go to the print button, machine type, and it seems like the Flash Forge Glider 2S gives me the largest build area. So the next thing you do is you just want to load a file. In this case, we're going to take the Robot B STL that you get from FAB365 and drop it down on the build plate. It says it's off, fine, put it on, there it is. Then using your scroll button on your mouse and your left button and right button and all that kind of stuff like you normally would do. Like if I scroll in, I can make things larger. If I hold the right down and move the mouse, you can see underneath the bottom. Anytime you see the dark blue, that assures that the model is actually contacting the build plate area. You can rotate it around that way. If you use the left one, that allows you just to move the whole scene in general. So if you're getting off screen, you can bring it back in. But what we want to do is we want to take these two right here and duplicate that set of two more times. So there's 6 of those smaller ones. We'll leave these larger ones, but we'll add 2 more sets of those 2 to get to the height that you saw on the model that I just showed you. And one of the easy ways to do it is you click on the model. Now it's a bright color, so you know it's highlighted. You go down to this button that says Cut. Click on Cut. And if it didn't happen to be in the way you wanted, you click Cut again and you can see it says Y plane. So if you wanted to do a cut, for example, in a different direction, you could select X plane. Or if you needed to change the height of something, you can select Z plane. So you can change where this cut is going to be, and this round disc is indicating where the cut would be. Well, you're going, well, I don't want to cut there. I need to cut here. Well, let's zoom in a little bit more into the area we're interested in, which would be right here to right here. And then by changing these numbers, you change where that red zoom thing was going to be. So now you're going, well, that's close. How does it look from the other side? Well, the other side we're not quite close enough. So we need, it's going to be 18 something. Let me move my 2 little robots here out of the way. And let's try 18.7. Okay, now let's look at it from both sides, or top and bottom, or any way you want. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to pull back out so we can see more of the picture. So once that looks kind of like where you want, and you can there is an undo function in edit, so you don't sweat it. Just say Start Cut. and boom, it's cut it, and it looks it looks clean. It looks like a very good place to have cut. So I don't think I'll change anything. So now I'm going to reselect this lower half. I'm going to click this again so I can see my controls. And let's try to snip it at the next point. Let's say 45.77. Oops. It looks like it's nibbing a little bit of this, so let's just try 45.70. And just pull out so we can see how it looks and say start cut. Okay, so that left, I'm going to clear this out of the way, that left a clean cut there and it left clean cuts here. So these now end up being the parts that we want to duplicate. So I will click on them again. I don't want to cut now, but it thinks I want to do a mode. I'm just going to say move just to get rid of it, because in a minute we're going to be moving these parts. So these two parts are highlighted, and if I just go up to edit and I say duplicate, it's now made another set of them. And let's see, if I say duplicate again, I think it'll pile them right on top of the one that's there. Let's just try it, see what happens. Duplicate. Oh, there's another part. Okay, so now we've got all the parts we want. All we have to do is restack everything up. And one of the easiest ways to do that, in this case, let's start with the bottom section. Since it was symmetrical, and I can select move, if I say center, it's going to center it in all aspects. It's going to try to put this whole lower section in the middle of the build plate. That's fine. The main thing I was interested in is getting a center. See, it's up here now. I'll just take my Y coordinate and drag it down. But the point is, I know that these two parts that I want to line things up on are now centered. So let's just drag it down here. Good. And let's do the same thing to this thing. Let's say center. So it centered it. Then just grab the Y and just drag it down. And you can just drag it down until, I'm going to move this so you can see a little better. Drag it down until it lines back up again. You don't want a gap between it and the part. You actually want it touching. See, you could move in too far. I should give you a different point of view. And you would lose a little bit of the hoop. And if you're out too far, then of course if you move this around, you're going to see, I want to get it so you can see that there's a gap between the two parts. You don't want a gap. You want it just touching. Okay, let's pull back out. So now we can do the same thing. Maybe you can move them around just by holding the left button and dragging your mouse. So if you didn't want to do the center and all that thing, you can position things exactly where you want. I mean, you could put that part anywhere in the model. So I'll go back and say center and drag it down. Too many. Let's go back there and just do it to the next one. Center. Drag it down. Many. Center. And drag it down. In the case of this upper part, we can't use the center. It's not symmetrical left to right, so it wouldn't center it up to this. So in this case, we actually will do what I just told you earlier. I've clicked on it to highlight it. Then I'm going to use, let's change our angle here so you can see better. Then just by holding the left mouse button down, I can drag this part around and line it up until it looks just the way you want. Then of course you can always release, get out here somewhere in the pattern, start looking at what you've done in all directions. And if the color difference between what you have selected and what you didn't want is confusing you, first you can close these boxes out to give you more viewing area. Just click out here in space somewhere. So now everything's the same color, so you can really look at it top, bottom, any way you want to look at it. Once you have your model the way you liked it, now that you've changed all those things, you can just go up to File, you can say Save. First thing it's going to want to do by default is save it in their own file format, the FPP. But you can just come down here and select STL, and now it'll save it when you hit save as an STL file in the same folder. And of course you'd want to give it a new name. In my case, I added the long leg to it, so I knew what I'd done that was different. And that's all you do for easily modifying something that'll run. The one thing I like about the FlashForge Slicer, besides it being free and letting you do all things like this really easily, is it's really fast. A lot of the other programs, especially MeshMixer, is very slow, for me anyway. This is very quick, saves them quick. It's just a really easy way to modify your STL files. And this was just one example of how you can kit bash an STL file. But I just saved it like that. And then in the case of the actual robot, I was going to print it on my Prusa MK3, so then I brought my file down into the, let's close this out because we're done. Save changes? No. I just used the normal their slicing program, the Slicer MK3 program, and that's where I changed my scale. By rotating it on their build plate and just using the scale button, I found that 40% larger, or printing at 140%, was the biggest I could fit on the build plate. It might be possible to rotate it and maybe squeeze out a 150, but 140 was a pretty good size model, and I was quite happy with the way it turned out. Let's see. Let's move the camera a little. I was quite happy with the way it turned out. And then I took their dome file and just increased it to 140. And this is printed in polysmooth clear. And of course you don't end up with a totally clear part, but it's more clear than normal clear PLA, for example, would be. And set it back on there. But everything on their model works well. Everything was jointed, everything turned. The only real problem I've had on every one of these that I've done so far has been the same thing. Is this top, when it folds down to snap, doesn't quite line up correctly with the two snap fingers that end up in the top of the body. They're too tight and too rigid, so I end up having to cut away quite a bit of them. It got to the point where I was just using a Dremel because it took forever with an X-Acto knife trying to peel it away. And even then it takes all my force with both fingers to get it to snap down. It's not coming apart. The baby is snapped together and nice and solid, and all the wheels and everything move like they're supposed to. It's a really well made model for printing flat and snapping together without glue. Like I say, the only real challenge for me has been snapping the top parts down.